Welcome to The Power Within, the podcast where we explore leadership, personal growth, and the dynamics that shape success. I'm Keith Power, and each week I sit down with inspiring individuals who share insights on leading with impact, building resilience, and unlocking potential. Through their experiences, we'll uncover the mindset and strategies that drive meaningful growth. Whether you're looking to evolve as a leader or gain new perspectives, this podcast is here to guide you. Mollie Rogers is the general manager for the prestigious French fashion and accessory company Longchamp in Singapore and Malaysia, as we explore more stories of resilience, growth, and the power of determination. Beyond her corporate leadership, Mollie is recognized as a visionary leader and community innovator who leverages her expertise to empower teams, drive brand growth, and foster sustainable change. Her journey demonstrates how strategic leadership and creative problem solving can elevate both business and community engagement. Mollie is an author, keynote speaker, and founder of Emotional Inclusion, a not-for-profit organization where she advocates passionately for humanizing the workplace. Okay, good morning, Mollie. Welcome.
Good morning, Keith, or good afternoon.
Yes, it is. Oh, my goodness. This is the first time I've actually done a recording in the afternoon, so that's my bad.
A lunchtime podcast. It doesn't get any better than that.
We should have gone live and had some canapes.
That's right.
I heard in another interview that you literally started at the shop floor in Longchamp. Tell us about that.
Yes, I did. And actually, fun fact, or maybe not so fun, but I graduated during a time of recession. And so I had landed in New York and was looking for a job and saw a post from Longchamp. And Longchamp is dear to my heart because my first bag as a teenager was a Longchamp bag.
Whoa.
And they were looking for someone to help them with customer service out of their Madison Avenue store. And I thought to myself, okay, I can do customer service. And I went for the interview, and they were actually looking for a sales representative. And I thought to myself, all right, well, let's take the job. And I worked there for a year, and asking myself pretty much every day what I was doing there.
This is in a retail environment,
and
right?
This is in a retail environment in the Longchamp Madison Avenue store, which doesn't exist anymore. Unfortunately, it was a gorgeous store. But, fast forward to today, as the general manager of Longchamp in Singapore and Malaysia, I can connect the dots. I think in order to really understand the full circle of retail, you need to understand what it's like to be in a store's ecosystem and understand the dynamics that go on in order to really be able to lead properly in this arena.
Oh, I get that. What were your original plans before seeing this advert then?
I was a late bloomer, and I graduated in languages in Spanish and Italian, which have not served me in any capacity, in this area of the world, having been here for almost 20 years. I was open to what came my way. And, I think as a young graduate and as a late bloomer, I was just
Open. Which is absolutely the right way to meet opportunity face on, to be open. Getting too fixed, too closed, too early restricts you. And look where you are. But as I understand it, you didn't stay there. You had something in between, and then you came back to Longchamp. And I'm not so good at pronouncing it as you are, obviously.
No, you say properly. A lot of people say Longchamp. Oh. And so, no, you said Longchamp, so that's perfect.
Or my French teacher at school, we used to have the language labs, so they could hear you, but you couldn't see the teacher. And she said, Keith, your pronunciation is perfect.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, your vocabulary is so limited, it will never be any use. And that's as true today as it was then.
Yeah.
Back to you. So after your experience at the retail end, the hard end of the business, what were the steps before you came to Asia with Longchamp?
So I moved to a company called 𝐿𝐵 Group, which has under its cupola 3 brands. One is 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, which is a skincare French brand, a 𝐼𝐻𝑡O, which is a hair product, and �𝐾𝐿, which is a beautiful perfume maison, which needed a bit of a revamp. And I remember their Madison Avenue store too, and where, you know, you would have these beautiful baccarat urns with gorgeous, just natural ingredients, perfumes. Everything was natural essences, and I was missioned to zhuzh it up, and so I had fun with that.
This is not a word I'm familiar with.
And it's to revamp it, to zhuzh it up.
I love it. I feel what it means.
You feel, right? It was the beginning of my understanding of what business development was all about. And so I opened up accounts at Henry Bendel and Bergdorf Goodman, and really elevated the brand in a way that was more fresh and modern, and had a wonderful time with that, although it was trying in the beginning. You know, I was replacing at the time a 40-year-old man, thinking that that was ancient at the time. I don't anymore.
It's funny how our perspective changes, right?
Absolutely. Really learning on 𝐿𝐵, and that has been for me the greatest school, if you will, in terms of learning the strings of business, that it be, you know, in store, understanding the dynamics of retail on 𝐿𝐵 once again, to having to learn the, you know, subtleties of business development, understanding how people work, and of course, understanding the industry. So that was a big learning curve. Sometimes I wish I learned more of it in school, but there's something to be said again about learning things firsthand. And
sure, I think I come from a sales background myself, and I would say that all of what I learned in life really was based on my time in sales, understanding humans and psychology. So despite that perhaps not being your first choice, it's held you in good stead ever since. And I'm sure you draw lessons from that all the time, especially the psychology. And I do want to later on explore, because I know that's an area close to your heart, workplace psychology especially. But I also hear your perfect pronunciation of French brands. I recognize it. What's the story there? You American or French? Tell me about you.
Where am I from?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm a citizen of the world at this stage. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, used to work for the CIA, and he was posted to Paris. And so my father was born there. And so he's half French, half American. And was later on in life posted to oversee Citibank in Paris. And so I grew up in Paris most of my life, but my mother's American, and so I'm French at heart. I went to French schools, and then got shipped to boarding school when I was 16 to the U.S. because I was becoming too French, and I have been in Asia for the last 20 years.
But your pronunciation is, I love the French accent. I think most Brits have this love-hate relationship with the French, but everyone I know loves the French accent. And listeners here know this because my second guest, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞𝐿, were talking about accents and how she'd like to lose it. I went, whatever you do, don't lose that.
Lose it.
Don't lose it.
No.
Can you, in your career, any part of your career, can you describe or think back to a transformative moment and you recognized it as a transformative moment, and what happened? What was the story behind that?
There have been many, but if I could think of one that was the most impactful in the last few years, it would be during COVID, right? When we were all scrambling to keep the business afloat and where morales were down, and where I really put humanistic leadership into drive, into action in a way that I had never before. And I chose to put emotional inclusion into action. And emotional inclusion is, basically is a core value. It goes beyond diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging strategies by focusing on emotional wellness. It aims to basically shift workplace culture, improving that prioritizing emotional wellness is not only the humane thing to do, but it's also a smart business strategy. And I saw the transformative impact that it had on my teams. Look, I think we have, in essence, evolved so little since the Industrial Revolution, which was just 200 years ago. It's shocking to think that it was just 200 years ago, but that's the case. Where, it was profitability at all cost and at the detriment of really including the humanity of the individuals we employ. And I always like to say that there's no such thing as splitting our home cells from our work cells. It's such a trite aphorism, isn't it? And also such a false dichotomy.
It's even more difficult. There were good and bad things from COVID, maybe a strange thing to say, but it did start to focus on the human side more. But then, on the other hand, we got much more used to working remotely, being apart from people, and you're losing that anchoring that you have of going to the workplace. Interested in your thoughts on this, because there's now very divergent schools of thought on the ways of working. Some bankers in America, get back to work, get in your office now. Others have said, we've discovered this is fantastic, we're never going back. And then there's somewhere in the middle. Where do you stand, and where do Longchamp stand on this?
I very much believe in taking the barometer of how everyone is feeling. And so for our part in Longchamp, Singapore and Malaysia, I asked my employees, I said, well, what sits right for you? Would you like a day or would you like 2 days of work from home? And they all unanimously said, we'd like 1 day. And so that was an easy sort of, check off the list. And also what I did is that I opened a new office, an office that feels like home and that is very much, within the ethos of our new store design. So we very much enter into the world of Longchamp whilst at the same time feeling a sense of home, which is all about our store design to begin with. But I thought it was very important to make sure that our employees, or that my employees, wanted to also come back to the office and that they feel good there. And we have a little room called the Zen Den, which is a place for people to go to if they want to nap. We all know the science behind the power of naps, cat naps.
Do you have guests? I'm there.
Yeah, well, yeah. You're welcome anytime, Keith. But if an employee wants to do yoga or do some meditation, they can. We make sure that we have a host of treats readily available for everyone. So my team enjoy being at work. They enjoy being in the office. But they also enjoy having that one day where they don't have to commute to work, and they can focus on their work without also being interrupted, because that's the other thing, right? When we're in office, we're always constantly...
Which, working in an office, the interruptions are what makes it work, but you do need that time where you're focused as well. You really need that. Now, I'm going to be devil's advocate here and ask you, it all sounds great from the employee's perspective, but what about the business, the impact on the business, back to that old-fashioned profitability? How do they sit together for you?
Well, actually, if I were to quote one of my favorite business magnate of all time, Sir Richard Branson, he once said, "Clients do not come first, employees do. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your clients and effectively of your business." When it comes down to profitability, we have it so backwards. We think that we need to focus on our clients in order to spearhead profitability. But unless you have employees that feel connected, that feel a sense of purpose, that feel that they are cared for, that feel that they are genuinely heard, the more they give it back to the business. I truly believe in that modus operandi, actually to make results.
You really do walk the walk. So from your TED Talk and your book, this is a passionate area for you. Take the opportunity, please, promote your book. Tell our listeners about your book, what it's about, because we've just described it basically in reality. But what's the book about in terms of trying to get other people to adopt this approach?
The book was a true labor of love. I realized how much information there is out there in terms of well-being, mental health statistics, but what I realized that there was a clear lack of roadmap in terms of how do we effectively put emotional wellness into action in our workplace. And I always say inclusion is a verb, and being emotionally inclusive of each other's humanity is really something we need to do. And I sound like a broken record at this stage, but is a book for all of us in the sense where it comprises stories of people who navigated hardship, as we all do, because it's the school of life. The grass is never greener on the other side.
Yeah, we all
go through our ebbs and flows. And it comprises stories of people who have navigated hardships and who could have benefited from a more emotionally inclusive ecosystem. So there are their stories, real life stories, of leaders, of people who are just, beginning their careers. So again, people from all walks of life. And then it breaks down what emotional inclusion is and gives pragmatic steps of how to create a more emotionally inclusive culture and pillar within organizations. I always say that the number one priority companies have to instill within their organizations is making sure that they have a mental health policy or scheme in place. Because again, when it comes to our overall health, we know that it's a mind-body conundrum.
It's all connected.
It's all connected,
and unbelievably so. I've been studying in the last couple of years hypnotherapy and was in the process of becoming a hypnotherapist, but that takes a back seat now. But that absolutely takes that principle of the mind-body connection. And it's amazing that you can even have hypnobirth, so you can give birth pain-free through hypnosis, because the mind controls the body, controls the messages that the body sends. So it's really important. But taking that another step, how do you use that? Or if you don't use that, what other methods do you use to inspire your team to perform at their best level? You ensure that they have this environment which is comfortable, but how do you inspire them to step up the gears then?
I make sure that everybody understands that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have good days and bad days. And I think that the leaders here, and I put myself in that category, we have the lion's share of responsibility in showcasing what that looks like, because we are so adamant overall of expecting our employees to behave a certain way, to do things a certain way. And when we ask them to be human, to be vulnerable, they don't necessarily feel comfortable in doing so. And I think if the leader does so themselves, or the leaders do so themselves, then at least it paves the way for employees to feel comfortable in opening up. You know, and I think that values here are extremely important. Our values at Longchamp are of authenticity and optimism. You know, we're a 77-year-old family-owned company.
Still family-owned?
Still family-owned. We haven't been snatched up by a huge conglomerate, as most have.
What's the time?
Most companies have. No, not planning on it either. The fourth generation is in and doing a phenomenal job. And so I think that Longchamp has this special ethos and culture whereby it really values the humanity of the employees they employ. And I've been working for Longchamp for 19 years in Asia. I started my career, as we talked about earlier, in New York. You know, when companies walk their talk, ultimately, employees feel it. It creates engagement. It creates retention. It creates, richer recruitment. And I'm proud of the company I work for, because
that's a fabulous thing to say.
Because they walk their talk. The employees feel it, and I, in essence, just have to reaffirm what it looks like in the day to day. And sharing my stories. You know, when I got divorced, 2 years ago, and I was ready to talk about it, and I shared, what I was going through with my team.
Okay.
I was met with such empathy and such compassion, and in so many ways, it brought us even closer together, And so I think when there's that deep-rooted humanity that is ingrained within the very fabric of our businesses, amazing things happen. And we're struggling right now as a whole because the markets are tough right now. The resilience is there, not the pseudo-resilience people, talk about. And no, the real kind, where we're a team, we stick together. Defeat is not in our vocabulary.
We're on the 6th interview now. That comes up so often. That in terms of resilience, just not accepting failure, not accepting defeat, and just saying that they are a lesson on the journey. Yeah. When you have that mindset, you can keep going. I want to go back to something you said about living it and being authentic so that the team can feel that they can be authentic and open themselves. You may be surprised to hear my first guest, Colonel 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, he's the head of the defense staff in Southeast Asia. He described a time where the general, the very top guy, shared about mental health, about how he's felt, and that the way that reverberated down, he said, it just makes the job so much easier. It's much easier if someone then in a very extreme situation, suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, they're trying to avoid it, they'll openly talk about it now. They model what they want to happen. Do you think that Longchamp is able to do this more because it's a fourth generation family company and does not have that quarter on quarter, which I was used to, you must fit Wall Street's requirements, boom, boom, boom. It's like a drumbeat. Do you think that being a family-owned company has allowed you to be this inclusive, this type of employer, and create this kind of environment? Do you think that's part of that?
Oh, no, no question. I think that there is something to be said about family-owned companies, and certainly Longchamp, sort of does things in their own time. The family takes matured decisions. There's a level of continuity in their thinking and ethos in terms of how they lead the business. And when it comes to, again, the employees of Longchamp, many have been in the company for decades.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm no exception by a long shot. And so I do definitely think that it has an impact on the quality of the culture, the humanistic culture as a whole.
It also gives you confidence as a leader. You feel secure.
I feel tremendously blessed for working for a company like Longchamp. There's no question about that either. The company has allowed me to deepen my work in this arena.
Okay.
Truth be told, I think if I were to go back in time and had been given the choice to decide what to major in college, 20 plus years later, I would have chosen psychology.
Okay.
And so, and there is something to be said about organizational psychology as well, and how that drives the business in a deeper way and in a more profitable way. We still have things so backwards still today. We're still in that archaic mindset pushing profitability first, and it's the other way around.
Profitability will follow. If you get it right with your employees, undoubtedly. And I was lucky enough to spend 15 years of my career working for a very large family company called SHV, Dutch company. What they were renowned for was being a bit more hands-off, trusting people to do the job. And they're now, I'm not sure how big they are, 80 billion euro, still a family-owned company, and it's never going to change, I can tell you that. And I think the key point you mentioned earlier, you skipped that scourge of the third generation. It's on the fourth generation, so it's safe, because the third generation is, if it's going to go wrong in a family business, is where it goes wrong, right? So I was just thinking, if I were the chair, or whatever your leader is called, I'd be looking at Mollie and saying, ooh, I love what they're doing there. Perhaps your next job is a head office ensuring that this becomes the culture of Longchamp. Perhaps this is a job interview for that now.
You never know. You never know. I love my teams. I love what I do. I think that there are so many ways of driving emotional inclusion, and I certainly do in and day out, and within my capacity of my role today. And so, but you never know.
How do you maintain your confidence through the obstacles that you come across? For COVID as one example, recessions, etc. How do you maintain your own confidence? You always seem to me to be quite up there, quite confident. And I'll just let the listeners know, I've seen you in real life. Like we're traveling on a plane to Kuala Lumpur, I spotted you. So I've seen you in reality, and you always stand tall, poised, elegant, but looking confident. How do you maintain that confidence?
Well, firstly, thank you, Keith. And I'll say thank you because I'm not good at taking in compliments. I stay rooted in humility um, as much as I can, and I practice a hefty dose of gratitude, and I try and level myself as much as I can when things are hard. And I think having a morning routine is so important. So I wake up early. I do what I call my meditation and movement. So I go out and I either go for a run or for a walk. And it's a time where I am able to re-anchor myself.
Okay.
And I think we all are so overall afraid of or resistant of taking time for ourselves, being silent.
It's so important.
And it's so important. And I have a friend who's a psychologist, and he was just sharing these latest findings on a study where people would much prefer be on the go or even receive an electric shock than to be in a quiet room with themselves to just be in silence and just be. And I don't want to misquote where the study was from, but it's from a highly regarded institution, but I don't want to mess it up, so I won't quote the institution. But it goes to show that I think we are so much into our daily lives and we're in go, go, go. We're on autopilot. That we forget to just come back, recenter, in order to really recharge. And so, I mean, I don't have any sort of magic secret, and nor am I, I think people always see you in a different light than you see yourself. And I think it's interesting. I'm someone who, it's one day at a time. Right. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does make sense, but I'm going to call you out and say I don't believe that completely. I think that you're strategic in your thinking as well. But in terms of dealing with things, you do one day at a time. Mm-hmm. You don't get to your position without having some foresight, some strategic thinking, etc. So dragging that back then into the workplace, in Longchamp, where does innovation come into play in terms of changing, the market's changing, mm-hmm. the fashion and accessories market is rapidly changing. Mm-hmm. Even a Luddite like me can see that. How do you adapt yourself? Do you use innovation, or what methodologies do you use to stay ahead, stay in the game then?
Yeah. So we definitely, again, and it goes back to really putting in motion and practice our core values. So that's something that is really important for us. So for example, we're in a market stance right now where locals are traveling to cheaper destinations. Tourists are not coming in as much as they used to, or at least our Chinese or the tier ones are no longer coming in. We are getting our tier twos and tier 3s. And so the market dynamic as a whole has shifted. Yeah. So the momentum is really about continuing to cultivate our relationships with our local customers and recruit new customers. Okay. Except it's more and more trying to do that based on what I just said. During COVID, the family really put their heads down and they reinvented, if you will, a new store concept, a 𝐼𝐸, reinventing in-store experience.
Okay.
And so the store concept is really meant to allow clients to come in and feel as if they are entering a beautiful Parisian home. We have removed all cash registers so that clients who come in don't feel like they are a dollar sign, effectively.
Okay.
We
Makes
have
sense.
placed welcome tables at the entrance of all of our stores because we know that the first, decisive moment, if you will, is that moment where the client enters and is met with a warm welcome greeting. And so that has shifted the overall visibility and brand image substantially. That has been very impactful. And then, of course, we continue to make sure that we curate and deepen our ties with our customer, our local customers specifically. So we will engage in a lot of in-store events. We will do experiential dinners, like we just did one a few months ago, in and around one of our new season's theme. And in this case, it was all about the Live Green theme, and bringing in our key, guests and friends of the maison, and having dinner and enjoying each other's company in a way that is not product forward.
Yeah.
It's there. The essence of these events is really to authentically, once again, be with our
But it's
friends of the
deepening
maison.
your
It's deepening,
relationships.
absolutely.
I can see that that transition where you had travelers coming in primarily from China, the tier 1 cities, etc. They're in for a few days.
Yeah.
It's a very different relationship that you have with someone like that who's coming in, quite key, brand driven, know what they want, get what they want, and go.
Yeah.
Whereas in Singapore and in Malaysia, you now have to position yourself in a deepened relationship with these family members. That's kind of how you see it. So that's a very, very significant shift in the business, right?
Yeah, and I think we've been in this, dynamic for a while. It's just become, I think, more and more strategic and important for us to do that.
Yeah.
Because the world is changing, the geopolitics at large
for
are
sure.
what they are. The maison is doing it beautifully, and Longchamp is a brand that you will see in every cabin class on an aircraft. It caters to all ages, all demographics, all pocketbooks.
And price points.
And
right?
all pocketbooks.
Yeah,
That's right. And I, truth be told, don't know of many companies that have that kind of niche. And to me, it commands enormous gravitas. And
It hasn't lost itself in the process. Like,
No.
we won't name other brands, but
Yeah.
other brands that used to stand for something, and now you just go,
No.
what we call in the UK chav brands. They've
Yeah.
become chav brands. Longchamp has retained this, that they can stretch right across the demographic and yet still maintain that gravitas that you spoke about. That's amazing to be able to do that, Frank.
Yeah, they've always walked their talk.
I lived in China for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
I hate certain brands, and we won't name other brands, where they deliberately have big, burly security guys, red rope, keeping you in a queue, and the store's empty. There's 3 or 4 people creating this artificial environment. I don't know much about fashion, but for me, that's an absolute turn off. And I've gone to go in there to buy something for my wife for a significant birthday. And I went, I'm not buying from this brand. I just walked away. I'm done.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'm not their target audience, but
No, but the interesting thing of what you're just what you're just mentioning is that these brands no longer have those cupoles
okay.
in order to, to usher in people as they see fit and to show the rest of the world that they have queues when they have 2 people in store. And no longer, if you've noticed, no longer do the luxury brands close their doors. The doors are
You're right.
all open now. And that showcases, again, the fact
It's a
that
psychological shift.
the fact that we're in a market dynamic that is tough.
Well, sometimes tough times bring out good solutions
Oh,
as
100%.
well. So
100%.
in your own leadership, do you have any specific philosophy in terms of your own personal leadership, leading your own team? Don't go beyond that, just your own day-to-day.
Well, one is to be bold and to be brave. No, our uniqueness is our superpower.
Yeah, for sure.
I love what Brené Brown said once. She said that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And we tend to compare ourselves so much with other competitors, with other people, with you name it. But it really is a thief of joy. And one that I stand by day in and day out is be humble because tables turn. Always stay humble.
Yeah.
Tables turn.
I came to Asia primarily to develop some humility. And then I ended up working for an American company where that was actually
That
dissed.
was out the window. Oh, goodness.
I remember, I won't name names, it's unfair, I won't even name companies, but I was running Asia Pacific, and a colleague of mine who was running the Americas, he was struggling, really struggling. We had kicked all our goals. So I decided I'm going to be Asian and humble. So I just said, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that. We just told the story, let the numbers talk for themselves. He spoke, and then he said, yeah, we're doing this and that, and here's the pipeline, and everything's lined up, and it's going to look great for the rest of the year. And our boss went, I nearly slipped an amen, good job. And then Keith, he said, why did you say you missed in Vietnam? And I went like, huh? How is that? I've kicked every goal possible. Yeah. So working with an American company is difficult when you're in Asia if you're trying to adopt Asian values and principles, especially humility. It doesn't go down
work.
well.
Oh, no.
It really does. You've
You
got to
should have
shout.
worked for the French.
I know. Where are Longchamp headquartered?
So our home market is Paris.
Right.
But in Asia, we are headquartered in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a split. So the world is basically east and west split, essentially.
Yeah, so Hong Kong, the headquarters are overseeing all of APAC, and then we have our different subsidiaries across Asia Pacific.
So where's your boss sit?
My boss sits in Hong Kong.
Okay, so you speak every day in English. Is that the
French and English?
Is it?
A bit of both.
Goodness me.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a Brit. We're absolutely useless at languages. I actually speak to an intermediate level Polish. But a little bit like your languages, outside of Poland, it's not held me in very good stead. But at least it was good that I knew I could learn a language. I was just too damn lazy.
Well, it's hard. There comes I've never learned how to speak Cantonese or Mandarin. And I've been asked the question, okay, so do you speak? And I don't. And I'm good at languages, but Cantonese and Mandarin are tough. And you need to sit down and put in the time, and so don't worry.
I did 100 hours of Chinese, of Mandarin, and I can barely order a beer. That's the truth. And then my wife, she's Malaysian Chinese, now Singaporean, fluently English, Mandarin, Hakka, Malay, Cantonese, and just flips between them. And I just
it's
absolutely
impressive.
blows my mind. But I also see she has different personas in each of those languages. It's not just learning the language, it's slipping and flipping then.
Correct.
So French and English are easy to slip for you.
Yeah, correct. Spanish and Italian.
Then, do you get much opportunity to practice those languages these days?
No, I don't, unless I go to Italy and I haven't been back, or Spain, and I haven't been back in a long time. But what's really interesting is that I don't think you ever lose a language. When I go back, when I've gone back, or when I have speak with my Spanish or Italian friends, it all kind of comes back. Yeah.
My schoolboy French returns when I'm in France, But as I said earlier, my pronunciation is quite good. So a couple of words, and then they start speaking holy, and I go, I don't understand anymore.
Yeah.
So I have to be careful. I should make it sound more broken than it is. I'm going to put you on the spot. I do believe when you say about humility, but I will ask you a question which you'll have to step out of your humility for a moment. What advice would you give to aspiring leaders who want to combine corporate success with meaningful community contribution as you have done? So I want you to show off how can others do that crossover part?
I think I invite them to delve a bit deeper within themselves and understand what their greater purpose is. And whatever that might be, that they go out and that they action upon it. And to not in any way feel or think that they don't have the right or the enough experience to do it. I know for me, my greater purpose is bringing emotional inclusion to the world.
Yeah.
You know, if I can allow our children and generations to come to be able to go to work and bring their full selves at work,
Yeah.
I can die happily, you know? And so I think it takes a while to figure out what our purpose is, but to take that time and to really think about it, because at the end of the day, meshing our purpose with what we do in our daily lives is what I truly believe is what makes us want to get up in the morning. And there is no greater joy than to be able to share that with people. You know, it's a bit of an apartheid, but, you know, in a lot of the blue zones, you know, a big component of why people live longer is community. And being able to share our purpose in a community-driven way, well, perhaps would make us live longer too, you know? But that's really what I would recommend. Life is so short.
Yeah.
It's so short. And I always quote this study by Gallup, which was a 2022 study, which found that 81,396 hours is how long the average person spends working throughout their lifetime.
Right.
Basically making sleep the one thing we do more than work. And yet we spend the bulk of those waking hours pretending that we have it all together,
Yep.
that our lives are okay just the way they are. And it's sad, you know, and I think that we all deserve more. We all deserve a really great shot at this lifetime.
Yeah. You only get one
Only
of it, that's it.
only get one.
Yeah, I know different people have different beliefs about that, but certainly this
Or
life,
rebirth. Well, in this life, there you go.
in this life,
Yes.
you really have to make the most of it. And
Yes.
I found now in my 60s that I realize I've done a lot, but I could have done so much more. But it's pointless worrying about that.
Yeah.
Instead, I twist that to, okay, what can I do now?
That's right.
So in the last 4 or 5 years, I trained as a barber,
Yeah.
trained as a hypnotherapist, trained as a coach. And if you talk about your calling, my calling undoubtedly is to coach and to mentor. And yesterday, caught in a downpour of rain, I spent an hour with a 30-year-old who definitely at a crossroads in her career. We had this conversation. She connected to me on LinkedIn, and she just said, "Wow, you've pushed me to make this decision that I've been procrastinating over, and you've inspired me." And I went, oh, I almost cried when I read it, you know.
Yeah.
That's my thing. And the fact that I now do that as a job is amazing. I just wish that I had found that a very long time ago. Mollie, you're lucky that you found that intercession early and are riding it. But something else will happen now. Something else will come along. I wonder what that is for you. I'll probably give an insight, and I hope your chairman was listening, because you've got so much more to offer the organization. If you were to go back and speak to, let's say, a 16-year-old Mollie, what advice would you give yourself with a little bit of knowledge of what you know now, but you're going back and you're meeting her? What would you say to her?
I would say to her, it's all going to be okay.
Relax.
Breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe and be yourself. Don't be afraid to show up in the world as you. Don't dim your light.
So at 16, you were already in boarding school.
Yes.
So was that, the way you spoke about that, sounds like you weren't the confident self you are now at 16.
Well, at 16, I was plopped into a new life in many ways. I'd never really lived in the
New
US.
country,
New country.
boarding away from
That's
family,
right.
all of these things. Yeah.
No, truth be told, it took me a long time to find that sense of worth.
Okay.
And I'm not afraid of saying it, because I think we're all, trying to find it and nurturing that quest of worthiness, self-worthiness. And we're all too afraid to admit it, except I think it takes a lifetime.
Yeah, it took me too long. Yeah. And again, what I was saying to this lady yesterday, don't live for your parents, for your boyfriend, your friends. Live for you. Absolutely make your decisions for you. Because if you cannot satisfy yourself and be happy, it's impossible to make anybody else happy. And you can't be responsible 100%. For other people's happiness anyway. So I don't think that's self-indulgent at all, to want more, to love yourself, and to want the best for yourself. And I think that anyone taking on that advice would do well, undoubtedly. So what's next for Mollie? Anything you can share? And if you say what's next, I know week to week you're crazily busy. I know that. But what's next in the next year or two for Mollie?
Well, I am going to continue the work that I do with emotional inclusion. There might be a second book. I'm thinking about it. I just literally birthed one 2 years ago, so given myself a little bit of a breather. But I think that that's definitely in the works. I've squared off the 2 TED Talks, so I'm not going to do another one.
Brilliant. Yeah.
But I think the work really continues in paving the way with other companies to breathe emotional inclusion within their organizations, to continue to breathe it into the work that I do day in and day out at Longchamp, and to continue in the path of divine surrendering.
Divine surrender. I love that thought. And you mentioned earlier about a psychologist friend, perhaps a collaboration with someone, a psychologist, to bring a new aspect, a new angle, a little bit more academia to your work. So bring your real life experience with this and pulling them together. Yeah, we are. We've written the book already, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's that's actually a seedling that has been plopped into the soil already. So we'll see what
all
comes
right.
out of
So
that.
I'm jumping ahead there.
Yeah.
Mollie, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today, this afternoon, as you reminded me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed all of the stories. I love your career is very different than most, but you accidentally started at the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but you realize how that anchored you, how that prepared you for where you are now. So thank you for sharing everything with us today. I look forward to seeing you again. Probably not at the store.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
You
Your
never
wife
know.
might need a handbag.
Yeah, she's... I won't go into that. So I look forward to seeing you again. I wish you well. There's no third TED Talk. That's the one takeaway. There's probably a second book. and I've pitched you ready for the next elevation of the job. Mollie, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Keith. It's
Have a
been
great
such
day
a
ahead.
pleasure. You too.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to The Power Within. I hope today's episode inspired you to grow, lead, and create the success you deserve. If you enjoyed the podcast, share it with someone who might find it valuable. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Join us next time as we explore more stories of leadership and personal growth. And remember that setbacks are just stepping stones to something greater. Until then, stay strong, stay positive, and keep believing in the power within.